Welcome back to Riftbound, and previously I made a video explaining all of the origins and Spirit Forged Riftbound legends. And by popular demand, we're going to go over the Unleashed legends today. So we're going to go over each legend, what they do, a general playstyle, and kind of what you can expect with that deck. The first legend we're going to go over is Jhin. So he is Fury and Mind Domains, which is red and blue. And he says, when you play a spell, if you spent 4 or more, you may banish it. Now, we're going to start with that first sentence. If you spent 4 or more, when it's just the number in a little circle like that, they mean 4 energy, 4 runes, not power or might or anything like that. If you spent 4 runes on the spell, you may banish it. Now, banish is like another zone. Imagine you have your deck, you have your champion area, you have your battlefield area, and then you have your trash. And then banish is just some other area. Like it's nowhere on the board. It's just banished in an unknown zone. So if you play a spell and you spent 4 or more, you may banish the spell. Then, if there are 4 spells banished with me, so you've banished 4 spells, put each in its trash, channel 4 runes, and draw 1. Now, Jhin's thing in League of Legends in the lore is the number 4. That's his big, character trait, and all of his abilities and all those things in the game are surrounding number 4. So it kind of makes sense that it's all about 4s, and I think people really enjoyed how true it was to his lore and kind of his vibes. He's not necessarily the most useful legend, but it's kind of an interesting playstyle. I mean, essentially, once you play those 4 spells, they end up in the trash anyways, and you get to channel 4 runes and draw 1. So it's kind of like you're going to be playing these spells regardless. You might as well get something fun out of it. But it would take a couple turns potentially, and it's kind of a harder play style, but I've seen some people online having fun with it. So it's a very spell-focused deck. Next up, we've got Rengar. Now, he is Fury and Body, so red and orange, and he's way simpler than Jhin. Basically, we are buffing units. So when you play a unit, give a unit +1 might this turn. Now, you're not buffing them like putting a little buff on them. You are just increasing their might for that turn. So that is not limited. Now, you can only have 1 buff, like those little buff cards per unit, but you can give them as many extra might as you want. Imagine spells like Punch First, so you add just +5 might. So you can do as much as you want. So technically, if you played 5 units this turn, you could give another unit, +5. That's kind of how we're going with Rengar. So it's kind of a more unit-heavy, kind of might-heavy deck. And the Rengar units have some fun things like ambush, because in the game he can kind of hide and pop out at you. So they're sort of playing off of that lore, which is why he's got a lot of cool mechanics going on with the ambush. Now, the next legend we're looking at is Pyke. He is Fury and Chaos, so red and purple, very scary domains. Now, Pyke's got a couple things going on in his text. So if you spend 1, so you spend 1 rune, you tap 1 rune, which is that 1 in the circle, and you exhaust the legend Pyke, you can return a friendly unit at a battlefield to its owner's hand. So you can just pull a unit back, and then you play a gold gear token exhausted. So essentially the gold gear tokens let you add a power. So whenever you have, you're summoning a card and you have the energy cost and the power cost, if you have that gold gear token ready, you can just use that instead of, recycling a rune under your deck, which is kind of reminiscent of Pyke in League of Legends because he gives you kind of gold if you have assists with him. I feel like it kind of goes with his vibes. And he also, goes invisible, has all kinds of stuff going on. So the fact that he has some kind of retreat makes sense to me. So you basically return a friendly unit at a battlefield to its owner's hand. But you do have to pay 1 rune, just, exhausting 1 rune to do this. So maybe a bit less powerful than some of the other red and purple decks, but I've seen a lot of people, especially at my local game store, have a lot of success with Pyke. Now we're looking at Vi. So she is Fury and Order domain, so red and yellow. And Vi's little catchphrase in League of Legends is punch first, ask questions while punching. And this deck definitely kind of embodies her vibe because when you conquer, if you assigned 3 or more excess damage, you may exhaust me to ready a unit. So you really want to be hitting hard with Vi when you conquer, and then you can ready another unit. So you can really build that momentum and kind of keep it going. So she lets you ready units, which is interesting because it can be hard sometimes to ready units and, get going like that, but she gives you a little in. And Vi did have a starter deck that you could buy, which was pretty good, had a lot of cards, had her signature spell in it, so it gave you a good starting point if you are interested in buying Vi. And I think with Unleashed, they had a lot more product, so there are still a lot of Vi starter decks around in your game stores or online if you're interested in kind of getting a start with Vi. I've been playing her recently, and she's been a lot of fun, but it's definitely a mechanic you kind of have to get used to because you don't always assign 3xx damage, and you're not always conquering, right? You don't necessarily conquer every single turn, so you might get a bit less use out of her than you would some of the other legends, but it can be very powerful when you do use her. Now we've got Lillia, who is green and blue, and her ability is that you have to spend 4 runes and exhaust the Lillia legend to play a ready 3 might sprite unit token with temporary. So essentially temporary means that it disappears at the start of your next beginning phase. So essentially it cannot hold for you. So if you summon that ready sprite, he can go right away to the battlefield and he can start a showdown or just conquer whatever it is. Has 3 might, which is fairly strong for, the beginning of the game and something that you essentially got for free. But he's going to disappear, so you're not going to get a hold point unless you're able to put another unit at that battlefield after or do some sort of shenanigans. And the interesting thing is this ability costs 1 less for each friendly unit with temporary. So if you're able to get other units out there within the deck that have temporary or other tokens or whatever it is from other cards, like there are other sprite cards that generate the same sprites, like the Sprite Call, Sprite Mother, whatever it is that you build into the deck, you can have this essentially be 1 rune and get a 3 might sprite. So it's kind of a lot of power if you get, powerful if you're able to get more temporary units out. But even having to spend 4 for a ready 3 might sprite, like you can do that on your second turn. So that's really not bad. Like it does give you a kickstart kind of going into the next round every single time. You always have this option to fall back on if the luck of the draw does not give you good cards to play. Now we've got Master Yi. So this is the second Master Yi legend. The first one came out in the Proving Grounds box, and we talked about it in the last video. But you may be wondering, why are there 2 Master Yi legends this early on in the game? Like we're only on set 3. And to my understanding, this is because the Proving Grounds box was not originally meant to be legal play. It was just meant to be a fun thing that you got to teach your friends and family, your kids, whatever it may be. But people really enjoyed the champions and the legends and the spells in the Proving Grounds box, and they ended up making it legal play for tournaments. So that's why Master Yi has a second legend already. Realistically, they planned the third set well before the release of the first set, so they're not going to go and redo everything just because they ended up making him legal. So he's just got a second legend, but they are the same color, so green and orange. But this Master Yi focuses on XP, so leveling up. Now, XP was a new mechanic that was introduced for Unleashed, and essentially 1 XP gives you level 1, 2 XP gives you level 2. So if you get to 6 XP, you're at level 6, and obviously 11 XP, you're at level 11. Various cards in the game give you XP for conquering, holding, just for playing them, all different sorts of things. So it's not too hard to actually get XP as long as you're on a roll. Like if you don't have a good start and you don't get any of your units and you can't conquer, you can't hold, you're going to struggle a little bit. But as long as you get a decent start, you are going to be getting XP. So it can become very scary quickly because realistically, there's no way for me to have my opponent lose XP. The opponent has to spend XP. Right? And Master Yi doesn't really have too many cards that require spending XP. And even his legend doesn't make you spend the XP. You can just accumulate it forever. So as soon as you get level 11, there's really nothing that the opponent can do to make you knock back your XP. I can't wipe your XP off the board. And then your units just enter ready all the time. And at this point, once you've reached level 11, you're at least a few turns in, right? So you do have most of your runes out. So you can play some very powerful units and very powerful spells for free. Like you're just having them enter ready. You pay the cost obviously, but they don't have a turn, they don't have a wait time. They're literally just there and ready to go, primed and ready. So it's quite scary, especially if you get on a roll, and it's very hard to deal with, I find personally, because you just have to stop them before they get to level 11. And that's like your main strategy. So it's a lot of fun. It's different from the original Yi, but it brings something new to the table, so it doesn't feel repetitive to have 2 Yis. They're very distinct. The cards that you put in the decks are not the same, except, some core spells like Defy or something, but they're very different. So you do have a lot of fun going with a separate Yi, so it was a fun choice. Now we've got Vex, who is green and purple, and Vex is a hold deck. So realistically, before Unleashed, there was not a huge advantage to holding. And a lot of the time you would notice players would just bring their units back. Especially if you see that, you know, I have units out that are going to be ready next turn that are just going to come and kill your guys. There's no point in trying to hold. Just retreat your stuff back and let them conquer, right? You don't need to lose your units for nothing. So Unleashed did introduce a couple of decks that focus a bit more on holding. And I think holding is a fun strategy versus just, you know, super aggro all the time, conquer, showdown, fight, etc., etc. Trying to hold is kind of fun. So Vex's thing is that when you or an ally hold, and they phrase it like this because if you're playing 2v2, then you are on a team with somebody. So when you or an ally hold, you may exhaust me to draw 1. And every single time you hold, you can exhaust the Vex legend and you get to draw a card. So you're good at drawing cards because purple is generally a color that does want to draw cards and just go through their deck and get the stuff that they need. So it fits in well with the domains and the vibes. And Vex did also have a starter deck, which is also readily available like the Vi starter deck. And if you're interested in playing Vex, you can pick that up and at least have a good set of cards to go with. People have been having a lot of luck with Vi, and the people who are really good and have it down, it is terrifying. I think she sort of came out of nowhere. I don't know if everyone was expecting her to be as kind of annoying and powerful as she is, but she can definitely give you a run for your money, and I don't know if everyone was expecting that. I certainly wasn't necessarily, because you kind of had that impression, like I said, that holding wasn't that amazing. So now you're seeing Vex kind of dominate sometimes, and it's like, okay. So she's definitely on the list of legends that I want to try out, and I do love Vex as a champion in League, so it's a double win for me. Now, Ivern has some fun abilities going on. He's the Green Father, and if you don't know Ivern from League of Legends, he is one with nature. Like, he doesn't kill the animals in the jungle, he just charms them. Everyone else goes and kills them, but he just charms them, and like, he's just, you know, he's like Mother Nature, essentially, but the Green Father. So Ivern's ability is that when you conquer or hold, you may exhaust me to replace that battlefield with a brush battlefield token. So in Unleashed, you had brush battlefield tokens, and you also had Baron Pit kind of battlefield tokens. So the Baron Pit ones came along with the Baron Nashor card, and the brush ones are for Ivern, because in League of Legends, he also spawns little brushes. Like, he can put out little bushes as one of his abilities. So that's kind of why he has the brush battlefield. So the interesting thing about the brush battlefield is that bird, cat, dog, and Poro, and of course Ivern, have +1 might in brush. And you can also swap this battlefield back when you score. So if the other person had, you know, birds, cats, dogs, Poros, you could take it away from them. But essentially, bird, cat, dog, Poro is the little tag. So at the top of the card, you know, it'll say cat, bird, dog, whatever. There's dragons, there's different tags for the regions they come from, like Noxus, Piltover, etc. So as the sets go on, we kind of see more and more things that play off of these little tags, which I think is cool, because at the beginning of the game, I remember the first set coming out and thinking, okay, well, it says dragon, like this must be important eventually. The fact that it's a dragon, there's going to be a dragon deck. So now we have like a little creature deck, you know, where there's birds and cats and dogs. So I think that's pretty fun. And it kind of opens up the door to like more interesting things you can do. You can just gather every single Poro imaginable within your 2 colors, you know, and every dog, every cat. And there's a lot of cards within the Ivern deck that do create bird tokens, etc. So it's a fun play style. I don't think he's been super dominant in the meta scene, but he's kind of the fan favorite of like people who just like cute little things. And I fall into that category of people who like cute little things. So I'm here for it. Now we've got Diana. Now, Diana has been dominating the regional qualifiers, the meta scene. She's been the top pick for tons of pro players, and she is purple and blue. So, Diana has an interesting legend ability. So, it's reaction speed, and essentially, you can have things that are action speed, which has to happen at certain times, and there's a priority that kind of passes. You know, I do an action, then you can have an action, and then I can have an action. But reaction just kind of happens at any time. It can be on my turn, it can be on your turn, it can be at any point during the showdown, or you can play a spell, I can react to it, but I can't act to it, right? So if you play a spell, I can't action your spell, but I can reaction to your spell. So it's kind of very powerful to have things that come in at reaction speed. It's like the quickest way to get a card out. So reaction speed, you exhaust the Diana legend and you add 1 energy. Right? Remember the little one with the circle? So you add an energy and you can spend this energy only during showdowns. So you essentially get to have more energy for your showdown, which especially early on, you know, you're getting a spell out that the other person can't even imagine having because they don't have that many energy. So it's kind of interesting, and you're able to, you know, do a lot of showdowns, obviously, and anything that's adding energy or having you draw cards, stuff like that is pretty powerful, and purple has a lot of those kind of synergies. Purple also has a lot of spells, so adding an energy for a showdown lets you play a spell that maybe does damage, gets you cards, gets you might, like whatever it may be. And it's just kind of giving you an extra bonus chance at winning your showdown, realistically. That's how the Diana Scorn of the Moon legend works. So there's a lot of text and a lot of symbols, but once you break them down, the first one, you know, reaction is just the speed. The little arrow thing means exhauster, so at least you can only do it once. And then adding 1 energy. That's the 4 symbols. Break it down, super easy. I know I got a lot of questions in the comments of the last video about Diana, but that's what it is. So you're just adding 1 extra energy to spend during your showdowns. Now we've got Leblanc. So she is blue and yellow, which is an interesting color combo. A lot of cool things are happening within blue and yellow. And she essentially just creates copies of your units. So that's what it boils down to, because again, as I sound like a nerd every time I say this, but in League of Legends, she makes a little like clone of herself, and you can't necessarily tell which one is the real player and which one is the clone. So she's got this whole deception thing going on, right? Which kind of fits her vibe and her character. So her legend says, when you conquer or hold, you may discard 1, so you have to discard a card from your hand, and exhaust me to play a ready reflection unit token there. So you play the reflection token at the battlefield, and it can become a copy of another unit there, and you give it temporary. So if we break it down, you conquer or you hold a battlefield. You discard a card from your hand, and you exhaust the LeBlanc legend, and you get to play a ready reflection token at that battlefield. So that reflection token just becomes another unit that you have at the battlefield. So let's say you have a LeBlanc champion unit at the battlefield. That reflection token becomes another LeBlanc. Now you have 2 of them. And I played against somebody who had Rift Herald, which is like a 7 or 8 might unit. And then suddenly he's got 2 Rift Heralds at the battlefield. It does have temporary, so it doesn't stay when you would hold again. But now when it becomes my turn to play, you have 2 Rift Heralds at the battlefield that I have to deal with. Yes, they're not going to be there at the start of your next turn, but that means it's going to be that much harder for me to conquer, because you have 2 units that are essentially super powerful for the cost of nothing, right? All you have to do is discard a card, and there's plenty of things in the deck you can discard without having to worry about it. So it becomes quite powerful, especially if those units, like, they're ready, right? So you can move them around. If they have something that is triggers on movement, that has ganking, like whatever it could be, right? Anything that happens, the abilities of that unit basically get mirrored, and you get a second copy of it for free for just a discard. So it's quite something to deal with. And then you also got to keep track, like, oh wait, no, they don't have 7 might at the battlefield, they have 14. You know, it's a lot harder to clear off. So it's definitely a tricky situation to find yourself in, and they can essentially do it again on the next turn if you don't clear them off, right? Because it's every hold, you can just do it again and again and again. So you really got to get on top of that and not let it get too out of hand. Yes, it's temporary, you only have 1 at a time, but still, it can become a lot. Now we've got Kha'Zix, who is also body and chaos, so orange and purple. And this is another XP deck, similar to Master Yi. We've got the new XP mechanic, and Kha'Zix has a spend XP. So Master Yi was just accumulate XP and win. Accumulate XP and GG, easy. Now, Kha'Zix does require you to spend some XP, but that means that, like, if you were playing Master Yi and you had 25 XP, it didn't mean anything, right? Once you got to 11, you were basically done. But with Kha'Zix, if you had 25 XP, like, you're spending it every single turn, right? So you can spend 1 XP and exhaust the Kha'Zix to buff a unit. Now, when it says this buff in that gray text, kind of like when we talked about before, that's putting the buff card, you know, the little +1 buff on your unit. And each unit can only have 1 buff. There's no limit to how much might you can add, like we said, if you give them a punch first or something like that. But the actual buff is limited to 1 per unit. So you can spend an XP and buff a unit. And you can spend 2 XP, exhaust him, to move an exhausted friendly unit from a battlefield to its base. So you can just go conquer on your turn, And then you can decide that, look, this unit is weak. He's not going to win. I'd rather just pull him back. And you can pull him back and not lose him. And then Kha'Zix has his own XP gain mechanic. So he's not entirely reliant on cards that give XP, because when you win a combat, gain 1 XP. So if you are engaging and you're able to win the combat, you're just kind of pouncing on them like he does in League. He just pounces on you. You're getting that combat win. You get an XP, and you can buff a unit immediately if you want to. Or if you have 2 XP, you can return that little exhausted unit back to your base and not have it die. Or you can just hoard XP and then buff them again later. So he's got a couple different options to go with. And the Kha'Zix champion unit, the purple one, also kind of plays into XP and ambush and stuff like that. So he's got some kind of fun plays he can go with. And I think that purple and orange is a really good color combo. And it's a lot of fun to play. So he's definitely worth a shot if you don't know what you want to play. And then last but not least, we have Poppy, who is my favorite legend. Well, I don't know if that's fair to say she's my favorite legend, but she's my all-time favorite champion from League of Legends. So I was very, very excited when she had a legend, and I obviously tried it out right away, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. So she's orange and yellow, and I do quite enjoy orange as a domain. It's got a lot. I think it's pretty balanced. And she's a XP and hold deck. So again, we've got 2 mechanics that are kind of iffy at times. The holding, which is sort of new and still not the most powerful. And then you got the XP, but she has a spend XP. So Poppy's thing is that when you hold, you gain an XP. And then you can spend 3 XP and exhaust her and draw a card. And her champion unit that you play, the orange Poppy, if the person is within 3 points of victory, that Poppy comes in ready and gives you 3 XP. So you can essentially just draw a card right away. So you kind of have that good combo going with the legend and the unit. They go kind of synergy very well together. I think she's a lot of fun. It's fairly simple. I mean, you get XP, you draw a card. You hold, you get XP. And you can still get XP from, conquering and holding from other cards, even if you don't actually, get the hold. But it's a lot harder. So I would say when I played Poppy, the main issue that I would run into is if I didn't get good draws at the beginning and I kind of fell a little bit behind, it got hard to get into that rhythm of collecting XP. Same thing for Master Yi or Kha'Zix. If you don't get XP and you never have XP, like you can't spend the XP to draw your cards, or you don't have the levels for Master Yi, or you can't spend the XP to buff like Kha'Zix, like you just kind of miss out on a core mechanic of your legend. Whereas some of the other legends just let you do the thing at all times. Like if you guys remember Annie from the first set, at the end of your turn, ready 2 runes. That happens no matter what. There's no conditions, there's no exhausting, there's no spending, there's nothing. It just happens. Same as Rengar here, buff a unit, you know what I mean? Give it a +1 might for this turn. That just happens. Like you don't have to do anything. You just have to, okay, I played a unit, I get to add a might. Like it's very simple. But some of these ones that have XP and stuff like that, it's kind of a condition. Like if you got to actually get the XP or else she's useless to you. So that's something you got to keep in mind sort of when you're looking for a play style that you want to play. And this brings us to the end of the video. Now that was all of the 12 legends that came out for Unleashed. And I want you guys to let me know down in the comments which legend is your favorite and if you are trying new legends from Unleashed or not. Because some people have been playing the same legend since the first set and they really enjoy it and they don't want to switch it up and they're practicing, which I think is a great idea. I personally like to try a couple different legends, try different decks, and kind of look at which play styles I like. And I got a couple comments on the last video kind of asking me, how would you choose a legend? And I really think that it just depends on you and your playstyle and your confidence. Some legends are easier to play and some of the colors are easier to play than others. So if you are still learning the game or you're not super confident in knowing all of the cards and what they do, which I'm not. Like I make these videos, but I'm not the best player in the world, right? I still have a lot of learning to do, a lot of practice, and it definitely, takes some time to get used to a new legend when you pick it up and stuff like that. So you can kind of be a bit more cautious and go with one of the easier legends if that's your priority. If not, you can just be like me, and I was like, I love Poppy. I'm going to play Poppy no matter what she says. She could literally say, I do nothing, and I'd be like, heck yeah, let's go play Poppy, right? Some people are just, I'm going to try this legend because I love the character. Some people are like, well, I love playing, purple, so I want to play always purple decks. It really depends what you're into, and some of the decks obviously have play styles that are a little bit better for certain things. Like, if you like the super aggressive decks, then you like the reds and the purples and blues and stuff like that, where you're playing a lot of spells and you're being very, very aggressive, versus kind of the longer kind of play, like a Master Yi, you're going to get to level 11. That's your win condition, right? Is getting level 11. Well, that's not happening in turn 1. You're not conquering, 2 points a turn for your first 3 turns. So that also comes with a bit more of a risk. Like, you have to be able to hold out and make sure the opponent doesn't win before you reach your level 11. So it's all these kind of things that you have to consider. But honestly, my best advice is just to try to find decks where you have the cards. Like, go on Piltover Archive, go on YouTube, go on Reddit or Discord, find some decks that you're interested in and look and see which cards that you already have that fit the decks. Just because if you end up not having enough cards, then you're not really playing the deck to its full potential. And you don't necessarily have to have the most meta deck at all times and the absolute best cards. But as an example, I was really interested in playing the Rengar deck, but I don't have any of the orange Rengars. And I don't have some of the other units that he needs. And it's kind of hard to not have the champion unit for the deck that you want to play, right? And then those cards happen to be expensive. So it's a bit of an investment to go buy them, and I'm not even sure if I like the deck, right? So start with things that you have, things you're familiar with. I ended up playing Annie first off, so I was playing red and purple, and then in the set 2, I was like, well, I'm familiar with purple. I'm understanding how purple works. I want to keep going with purple. So I played Sivir, which was purple and orange. And then when set 3 came out, I was like, okay, well, I want to play Poppy. She's still orange. I'm building this familiarity and kind of this understanding. But I've never played a green deck, right? I don't know the green cards that well. I've never played a blue deck. I don't know what the blue cards do as well. So just kind of build off of what you know and have fun with it. And don't be afraid to try things that are off meta. Try random things. Try a deck you saw on somebody's YouTube. Like, just have fun with it and learn and play and practice. And that's really the best advice. And eventually you will find a play style and a deck and a legend that you like, and you're just going to roll with it and you're going to have a lot of fun. So stay tuned. Vendetta releases soon, and we should know all of the Vendetta legends very shortly. Previews are starting kind of right away, so I will definitely get a video out for all of the Vendetta legends as soon as we have all the info. Thank you for watching the video and for all the support on the last one with all the legends. People were so excited to learn about them, and I'm happy to tell you all about the legends. So see you in the next one, and follow along for more.